Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. We are here with Kevin Allen, as usual on a Friday. A lot of stuff to talk about today. We'll start with our pre-show. Russ, go ahead.
Even though I'll start quickly because I think the baseball conversation is quicker, but I'll start with that. We heard Blake Snell. Now we're heard from Bryce Harper, both clients of Scott Boras, but both of them saying that, there's a fair amount of risk if they go back and play. I know that some people think it's full gamesmanship from Boras, but I only think it's part gamesmanship because, again, if you do contract the disease, it could really it could affect your lungs and it could affect your play long term. So end of the day, I think I understand where some of these players are coming from, and we'll see what Kev thinks. But this past offseason, the players got killed. They got hit over the head. A lot of them got bad contracts, and they're not making as much money. Now you're asking them to make less than that, and now you're asking them to revenue share. And so the way he sort of laid it out was, at the end of the day, I'm going to have $2-3 million. Now, we'd all kick our heels at that. But, again, his career is not going to be as long as, we all think it might be. And so to him, it seems like a losing battle simply because of the risk. And my answer to the risk is there's always a dollar amount you could put on anything that says, I'll do it even though it's dangerous. And that's not his. And I think there's going to be more players with that. And I think that is a major stumbling block. But Kev, what do you think?
Well, I think most players, if you pin them down, whether or not they believe they're at risk to die from COVID-19, I think they would say no, because they're young and they're healthy and, it's going to be miserable. But, they're not in the high risk group. So I think there is a fair amount of gamesmanship going on with this, but that doesn't change the fact that, a lot of these players are family people, and they know that there's danger as well with, bringing it back to the family, to their parents, to their, their father-in-law, their mother-in-law, to the people. It's the same argument that we're now making with the schools. Like young kids are even though there's an issue that's now percolating with the younger children, similar, is it Kawasaki syndrome?
Yes.
Similar to that. But anyway, that's percolating. But, the bigger concern is that the children would go off and come back and bring it to grandma and grandpa or to people. So, I think the danger is real in this, but I think the prevailing sentiment here, and shame on baseball if they viewed it this way, but how long has the MLB stood against the salary cap? Like, that's their thing.
Right.
That's their thing. We're not giving in on that. We're dug in. We're not giving you a salary cap.
Right.
So, what the baseball owners are proposing is essentially a salary cap. We'll split it.
Right.
The revenue. And they have stood against that forever and a day. They had to know that's how players were going to react. So I hope that smarter heads will prevail here, and they'll just kind of sort it out with something that doesn't resemble a cap. And the argument from the owners would be, well, it's just a temporary thing, but there's nothing more permanent than a temporary solution.
Oh yeah, and that situation. You clearly see that. Yeah, we're going to open up. We want to basically do revenue sharing, but Russ was telling me earlier they're not willing to open up the books in the sense of having a forensic counting of situations. So, take our word, this is how much we make. No, they're not going to do that. But on the other side of it, Kev, as I said to you off the air, I have all the respect for Blake Snell. If he doesn't want to play, if he thinks he's putting his family at risk or his future in risk. But when you couch that by also saying, well, if you pay me my full salary, you're basically a prostitute. You're saying, okay, if you give me a certain amount, I'll go ahead and do it. But I'm not going to do it for $2.5 million. Well, you do it for $10 million, but you're not going to do it for 2.5. It definitely smacks of this is a leverage play. This is PR. This is what's going to go on the next couple weeks until they reach a drop dead date in terms of being able to start the season. I find it amusing. I find it entertaining. I don't take it serious.
I never thought I'd be so thankful for the NHL and the NHLPA's relationship.
Well, right. We're thankful that they already have a salary cap where the revenue is already split.
Right. I think
that allows them basically to enter into this and just solve the problem.
Right.
And, I keep seeing sort of the presentation of this as if there's a lot of arguing back and forth. Well, it's not really like that, because it's in everyone's best interest to solve both of the issues, keeping players safe, which is first and foremost, and then, how to do it in such a way that they can maximize revenue, because that's what both of them, need at this point.
This brings up my biggest pet peeve, which I'd like to get into for a second if we could.
Sure.
Well, want to start the show? Because I
will start the show right after this.
Yeah, there were a couple other real quick things that we wanted to touch on. One was the passing of Bob Watson, the former Yankees GM. Funny thing is, Russ, I remember him. I mean, he played for the Yankees a couple years, had a really good year. I think it was 80, maybe 81. Like that in between the World Series wins against the Dodgers, and they lost to the Dodgers in 81. But I remember him with the Astros, and he was a pretty good hitter.
No, he was really good with the Astros. I think he was a catcher first, and then ended up playing the field after, and he was a really good hitter. But again, I was a little kid, and when Major League Baseball was truly at its point of being fun, and even Eck would agree with this, they had the contest where you'd have to figure out who's going to score the 1 millionth run in Major League Baseball history, and Bob Watson was the answer because he did it.
And he was the last Yankees GM before Brian Cashman. So we're talking 1996. Brian Cashman's been there for, I think, 24 years. So it's pretty interesting that was long. But he was, he had to be given a lot of credit for those Yankee championship teams because he was the GM in the mid 90s. That and this story, and it's unfolding right now. We
don't know the whole thing, so I'm going to bail on it other than to say there's 2 NFL players pretty much on the lam with they basically with an armed robbery issued a bulletin issued for them. So they were at a party and they robbed people at gunpoint, and so it's unfolding. But one plays for the Giants, who's a Pro Bowler, and one plays for the Seahawks. And so I'll wait for more info to come out, but clearly they're going to get arrested. It just probably will happen in the next day or so. And that's a big story because right now there's, if there's crime happening with not much happening in the world, it's getting a lot of press. So this is not good for the NFL.
Yeah, needless to say, this will get as much coverage as the Brendan Leipzig thing did last week. It'll be 4 hours of New York radio on DeAndre Baker. So there you go.
Yeah. How entitled and omniscient must you think you are if you're an NFL player and can do something like this? I mean, I just don't understand it.
Yeah, there were 3 guys that were involved too. So
I want to tell you that there's crime everywhere during this pandemic. I was asked to read over, the kind of a Zoom-like feature, a book to my grandkids, and the book is "I Want My Hat Back." And as it turned out, the rabbit stole the bear's hat. So crime is everywhere.
Stop thief.
And, I can't read a book without making it real for my grandkids. At the end, I pointed out that it was a criminal activity.
It's a criminal conspiracy.
There's a great Parks and Rec with that. Anyway, we'll get to later. She's reading.
I have an honest rabbit at home who has no convictions, no priors. I just want to say that.
Yeah, but it eats like
a rabbit. Yeah,
it eats like a.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, I'm not sure, but if I understood this book correctly, I think once the bear got the hat back, I think he ate the rabbit. I thought this. Wow, like they have really changed. I'm pretty sure
that is
in this John Klassen book, because the bear now is back with his hat on, and he's sitting there, and he's being quizzed like he had quizzed the rabbit, and he said, I wouldn't eat the rabbit, much like the rabbit said, I didn't take your hat when he was clearly guilty. So I guess you're left to draw your own conclusion, but I think there were 2 criminal acts.
That's way worse, actually, isn't it? I mean,
way worse.
If the bear does his business in the woods, we know it's a rabbit.
There actually is a message board post, Kevin, that says, "Should the bear eat the rabbit?"
Not if the rabbit brought the hat back.
About the discussion about this book.
Well, I'll tell you didn't see it coming, because this bear is polite throughout this book. Like, every time he asked the snake and the fox and everyone else.
My favorite pre-show ever. I want to throw that out there.
Every time he'd ask someone about whether they had seen his hat, whenever they'd say no, well, he'd say thank you very much. Like, he's the most polite bear, ever. He didn't threaten anybody. He didn't say, I'm going to eat you, Mr. Fox, or I'm going to eat you, Mr. Frog. And at one point, he helped the turtle get on a rock. So he was polite throughout. So at the end, if he did indeed eat the rabbit, you really didn't see it coming. Like, it was a surprise ending.
Sounds like he's a Trump supporter. So we'll move on. But anyway.
I'll let you in on a secret. The bear is Kaiser Soze.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
My pet peeve is not even worth getting into after that, except to say this: that for the first time ever, I delved into local politics by posting on a local message board on Facebook about my opinions about the graduation plans of the senior class, and it's very funny when you do this, because I'm amazed at how incredible the senior class kids are. Like, this generation is fantastic. Like, they are absolutely smart. They are not sarcastic. They understand what's happening in the world. They understand that this is crazy, and that this is like a couple of them saying, like, this, we realize this is kind of our Vietnam. We have to kind of deal with the fact that we're not going to get things the way we want them. I mean, the maturity level of these kids really just blows my mind. The immaturity level of their parents is shocking, like, just beyond shocking. And I got on there and I said, listen, finally, I went in there and I said, this is my, and what's funny, as like an expert of the internet, like, which I do consider myself, as a person who deals with trolls all the time, every friggin' day, none of these parents have a chance with me on a message board. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you realize how powerful you are and how much you can just, whatever they say, how much I can take them down in second gear of 5 gears that I have. You know, like, I barely have to do anything to just take, because these people are used to, these are just your everyday, you know, show schmo, whatever, living in suburban Pennsylvania. If they try to go at something I say, I can break them down so quickly without, and so kindly, that it's just interesting how much we know, how much when you're on the internet, how you learn that culture and how other people have a tough time in it.
That's interesting, though, because I've really been heartened by how I've seen them deal with these graduations. Like, in fact, I just saw a news report this morning where one of them, they did it at a drive-in theater. Another time, the city has put up, they have turned their entire town into a giant yearbook. So everybody's face is.
That's fantastic. There are things like that our area is doing as well. But the big thing is, like, the other districts in the area have already, like, put out there, like, some of them are going to have the kids just walk across the stage for a photo op, handed their diploma one at a time. Some are doing, like, you know, they're just going to stay in their cars until their names are read. And I just came out and said what I think is the pretty freaking obvious thing is, why don't we just do this next year? Why don't we just, the day before the class of 2021 graduates, have the class of 2020 graduate a ceremony? We'll have a virtual thing this year on TV that on their computer, they'll be able to watch, and they'll be able to pass through that time.
Well, I'll tell you why, because half of them will be
They'll
away.
be scattered, yeah.
No. This is after their college year, and you know they're all. Plus, besides that, most of them, to be honest, aren't going to be going to college in the fall. They're going to be doing it home. So
yeah, they're going to be elsewhere. I mean, I don't know how you work.
Some of them will be, and that's fine. But most of them, I mean, the reaction has been.
I'm just saying the
reaction.
I think the logistics of that would be difficult. I like the idea, but.
I mean, it's similar to, and just to bring it back to sports, and then we can start.
Yeah,
it's like the Baseball Hall of Fame. They're going to have the induction ceremony for Jeter and Ted Simmons and Larry Walker next July. But the only thing that sucks for that is all those people who made reservations well ahead for July in Cooperstown. Yeah. It's probably half of New York City are going to probably have to get they'll probably get the refunds, and they'll have to go back next year because they're going to have a double induction.
Yeah, well, but it's the only way you can give these people something that's safe in the future that they can look forward to. Like, you can't plan something in August and think it's going to work out. You just can't do it. It's just like we don't know. And I mean, logistically, you already have the stadium set up. You already have everything set up for the other class.
I think it's a good idea.
One night earlier, and if you can't make it, you can't make it. That stinks. There's no way I'm talking about. But if you can make it, you do have the virtual graduation this year. But the kids' memories of like something. I mean, the other thing that sucks to these kids. I'm sorry to go off. The other thing that sucks to these kids, they didn't get their last day of school in high school, which is a really big deal. Like when I talk to them, they're all like, "I didn't get that last day to get like my."
Oh, you mean when you get to walk up?
Yeah,
around to give the thing and give the middle finger to the school. I
the senior skip day. That's what you missed.
Yeah, but senior skip day is I had to rearrange my schedule a couple times for senior skip day. That's how important it is to.
Yeah. You're talking to the son of a teacher who drove 10 miles, and his dad was his ride to high school. So I didn't get senior skip day because I would have been abandoned in the city of Buffalo. So
I mean, I would give them one day where if they want to, they can go back and pretend it's the last day of school, and I would give them a graduation. I said, do that back-to-back days. Give them the one day they can pretend they're back. I call it Back to the Future night or something like that, and just have fun with it. There's so many ways to do it, but nah, whatever. Let's move on, please. I'm sick of myself.
Okay.
I apologize to everybody out there.
Go ahead.
Hello, Hockey World. It's Friday, May 15th, 2020.
I'm Michael Lagello, and I hope the bear doesn't eat me.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Kevin Allen.
And I'm Eklund, and I really want to get into this message board at some point, Kevin, with you about the bear story, because it's really funny. I was just checking out something. Watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And now, I guess, before one of the things we were going to discuss today a little bit is the Olympic team. And I we did the U.S. Olympic team a couple days ago, and I kind of want to go through it with Kevin again because he is the U.S. Olympic expert in my mind.
Sure.
But I also want to get into Team Sweden, which we're going to talk about today too, if possible. But first, we have to start, of course, with the ever-changing landscape that is. When are we going to find out something? When is something going to be said? What's going on? And now the latest thing of now there's so much pushback that who was it? Somebody said that
Bob McKenzie.
June draft on life support now. It's like.
Yeah, basically, I'll just encapsulate what he said. He said the chances of a draft in June are on life support because the NHL does not want to expend the amount of political capital it would take to have a draft in June. There are a lot of people that are against it, which we've been saying for ad nauseum, and they want it, but they don't want to basically drag people kicking and screaming to have a draft in June. So,
anything like Gary Bettman would say that.
Yeah, actually.
You think he's worried about expending political capital?
Yeah. I think that's the politics are part of it. I mean, you can't be a commissioner and without there are battles you pick,
right,
and battles you don't. And I think this is one of the things that I can't imagine this is a big enough event for him to draw a line in the sand and say, let's do it. I mean, everybody was against it from the team level.
Yeah, everybody.
And, some owners were for it for the promotional aspect of it, and it just probably didn't seem worth it at the end.
Yeah,
I mean, if they don't do it, what would be the reason they wouldn't do it? If where they, they've just decided it just wasn't worth it.
So the biggest problem is what's the option here? What are we looking at then?
Well, the only thing I was going to say is the biggest problem if they don't do it in June is there are some teams that have as many as like 10 employees under contract to June 30th, and that's it. They're not going to give them new contracts because they'll retain the ones they're going to retain, but you're not going to retain all 10 as an example because they're not going to have anything to work on. Like scouts may not have anything to work on for 6 months.
Teams are laying off people now as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think that's an issue. But I just think they'll let them go and
GMs, Kev, there's going to be probably, my guess there'll be 2 or 3 teams without permanent GMs, and the season will start up. Like that'll be the weirdest thing that we've ever seen.
Well, I mean, we've already seen Mike Fuda leave Los Angeles. We've already seen Paul McFarland, the leaf assistant coach, going to Kingston in the OHL. The Texas Stars laid off most of their staff, and a few other scouts and analytics people who have sort of dropped off the last couple days. So I think the signal that's being sent here, Kev, is that the current pause isn't going to stop teams from doing their business because they have to do their business.
Yeah, I mean, Russ had a really good point the last time we were on about how, if you let them go, then and they sign with another team, they've got your stuff. And I ran that by a general manager, and he shrugged and said, is that really going to alter, how we do things? Like he said, would I prefer them not to know what we're thinking? Well, no.
Right.
Yeah. But he said, that's not that big of a deal. So
right, it's not. I get it completely.
Now, one of the things that we brought up a few weeks ago and sort of popped up yesterday, I think it was Pierre LeBrun who mentioned that there's still some economic issues regarding escrow that are still being still a concern to the PA, that, what is escrow going to be next year? Obviously, if there was a new CBA and the losses were spread over a number of years, that would solve the problem, Kev. But they're looking at this short window where it's the last year of the CBA, and if they keep the cap number at 81.5, not based on revenue, but just based on league stability, what is going to happen?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing I'd want to say, and I know most of our listeners are savvy enough to understand this, but I keep getting emails and stuff from people who don't really understand. If the league is not taking extra money from the players, all they're doing is holding money to ensure that there's a 50-50 split. And the issue is the psychology of it all. Like, it's not extra money that players are losing. It's they don't like the idea that they're withholding their check, because in previous cases it turns out that they didn't have to give that money because it worked out that everything was fine and they got that money back.
Right.
They don't like the league having that money. They want to have their money. So that that's the issue. And I know most people understand that, but not everybody does. So I understand their concern. I mean, nobody wants to think, okay, they're gonna pay us our check, and then we're gonna have to give 30% of it back. Essentially, or they're going to take 30% out of it.
Right. But the other factor
is that any different though than them just saying, okay, everybody, we're going to give you 70% of what the money is, because that's what it's going to work out to. Because we're not going to be able to produce the $5 billion that we had, this year.
The other factor is today's May 15th, and we still don't know what the players are doing with that last check.
Right.
That's another factor.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but I why is that a big deal?
Because I guess based on what they decide to do with it may solve some of the escrow problem.
Well,
I mean, it could, but again, all that is psychological.
I know. But it just may take it off the board. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
When money comes into play, psychological is the thing. That's like
it's the psychology of it. I do understand that. I mean, we all face that all the time.
Yeah, for sure. So, and people, and players, and they it's not they don't trust the league. It's just everybody's. I mean, this is an accounting issue. I don't know if they paid them 70%, would that be better? Because then they'd have to pay. And they could somehow manage. Does this change their taxes at all? The way escrow is paid? I wonder. That's something I wonder about. Is there some concept that makes it better? I don't know anything about that kind of stuff.
That's a fair question, Eck, and I don't have an answer for that.
Well, I know that's a factor in signing bonuses, because that's one of the reasons why Toronto has been very forthright in doing heavy signing bonuses for guys like Marner and Matthews. Matthews is in Arizona, which I think is a non-state tax state, so he gets his bonus on July 1, and he doesn't get hit with taxes. And Marner is in Ontario, and Ontario calculates taxes differently for bonuses rather than salary. So all those factors. So I mean that's interesting. But one of the things that was a factor in that final payment was apparently the league the players got refunded for escrow from the previous year. So I'm surprised they didn't surrender what I think was $150 million in salary back to the league, because it's either paid now.
We don't know yet. It's not the end of the day. We don't know if they got their checks.
Yeah. Well, the one thing we should point out, and my buddy Tom Laidlaw always points this out as well, and it's true. We think look, none of these athletes are getting stimulus check. They're well past that threshold.
Right.
But there are guys who are players who come up and down, and where taking money out of their check is real. If you're a guy that's sort of a 28-year-old guy who gets 3 games in the NHL in each of the last 3 years or 5, then this does kind of matter. So. I mean, for
a lot of them, this is their rest of their life paychecks. They're looking at it they're saying, this is what I'm going to make $1 million for 3 years, and that's going to be it. And that's a lot. That seems like a lot of money, and it is a ton of money, no questions asked. But if you don't spend that, if you don't save that the right way, and you're 24 at the end of it, you've got issues. You gotta when you're not continually making money. They're getting all this money up front, and they're 24 years old or 22 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only point I was trying to make is that it does matter when you're going to get that money if you're in that position.
Yeah.
Now we understand there's you have maybe a little bit of a rumor or trade speculation of some sort here.
Well, it's just something I read on Twitter, but it made a lot of sense. Jim Matheson threw out there, and I don't think this was he learned this information. I think this is a guy who's covered the league 40 years who put 2 and 2 together, and he thought that the Oilers and the Senators should talk about Puljujarvi for their third pick, which would be the Islanders pick, provided that the Islanders don't win the lottery. Who knows what the lottery will look like. But if they got into the top 3, of course, it wouldn't belong to them. And this is a question that I'm sure Russ can answer better than I am, but I'll pose the question and he can address it. I have no idea. I mean, I know that Puljujarvi ended up scoring 24 goals this year in the Finnish league. And we've seen him score at the AHL level, and he had some games where he looked like he was going to be a star. So the question is, I think if I'm the Senators and I got 3 first-round picks, and I have a guy that's farther along in his development that can come in and eventually play, if not play now, I would be very interested in that because, we know what that historically the bottom of the first round doesn't those guys don't produce at the same level historically as the guys at the top of the first round. But, I don't know enough for us to talk about, is Puljujarvi still considered a first-round prospect, or has that boat sailed and people think, he's not going to be a guy that's, going to come in and, be a top player. So once you answer that question, I think that could be a deal that would interest both teams.
I think the thought is the boat has sailed because you are now going to have to make sure you could get through to him and get those same results. So as an example, Lafreniere is going to play right away. Byfield's going to play right away. And even if Drysdale takes an extra year or two and you're Ottawa, look what they got in Thomas Chabot. Are they really going to pass that up for a maybe in Puljujarvi? And I say
they wouldn't do that.
This 21st pick.
The 21st pick. Even the 21st pick, yes, the guy they get will take 2 to 3 years, but I think people look at Puljujarvi now as a maybe.
Right.
That's what I didn't know. So.
My take on Puljujarvi, what I've heard about Puljujarvi, and I always say everybody has a 1-sentence thing attached to them in the NHL, which is ridiculous, but it's true. Puljujarvi's one is that he didn't get the culture of North America and didn't want to.
Right.
That's
pretty damning.
That's the issue that they'd have to worry about more than anything else. And and you're looking at and that's why in my mind I talk to people in Winnipeg about this, and I'm like, listen, we know that Patrick Laine and he were tight. I mean, they played together on teams. If you put him in a situation like that with a guy that he knows and a friend of his, does he become a more powerful player?
Or with countrymen like with the Rangers who have a lot of Finns, or
the Canadians who have a ton of Finns, like the Montreal
or the Canadians with a ton of Finns. But here from the Ottawa perspective,
still not a great skater either. That's the other thing.
But from the Ottawa perspective, though, they've got the 3 first. They're not trading a top 10 pick for a guy who was drafted 4 years ago, who's been in the NHL. They have 4 second-round picks. If I was Pierre Dorian, I'd say, okay, I'll give you a couple seconds. I'm not giving you a first.
Yeah, he would definitely move a second or 2 for him, sure.
Yeah, but
that's interesting, Russ. Would you give up 2 seconds?
Not 2, 1.
Okay, 2. Well, Mike was saying 2.
Well, that's Mike. Mike's not. Mike's going to get fired.
Okay, a second and a third. Okay, we'll negotiate here.
Well. Yeah, I'm not sure the Oilers would do that.
But I think they would give a second, and I don't even think they would give him the second pick that they have. I think they would give him one of the others. Because again, the skating still needs to be corrected. We've already seen how players can go over their score and they come here and they still have skating issues. And then what X said as far as adjusting, that's another issue. So there's at least more than a 50% chance he's not going to make it on his second go round.
Well, you could say that Edmonton is probably one of the tougher cities to adjust to because, in North America, because it is definitely kind of out there. It's out there on the prairie. I mean, it's like, so where he was, you could make the argument of he wasn't good at culturally adjusting into Edmonton, but Edmonton's tough.
And also, he spent half of his time in Bakersfield, California in the AHL. It's not exactly
which isn't a tough place to adjust.
No, but it's I mean,
AHL. I mean, your ego, but
it's not a great place.
No, it's not a great place. But I think, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think the big thing would be he'd have to be able to tell a team that he's ready to come to North America. I think that's, if he was ready to come to North America, I think he does maybe get to the first round because he is that good.
No way. No.
If he'd have to really convince somebody. And maybe, that's why I think like Patrick Laine is the guy.
He's got a lot of unknowns. Okay, he was drafted 4th overall. He's a talent. There's no doubt. But he's got a lot of unknowns and a lot of flies on him in the sense that teams are not going to risk trading a first round pick for a guy.
I agree, but you also have to go back to remember the guy who skipped him at the draft in Kukalainen was always fascinating. Like that was like a big deal because here's a Kukalainen who doesn't want to be considered a Finnish GM, but everyone's like, yeah, you sort of do have a lot of Finnish players once in a while. You
sure.
He didn't draft on him. Like, why would he? If he would have had really good intel on him.
I'll use an example from a couple of years ago, and I don't think there's as many doubts about Puljujarvi as there is about this player. But when the Oilers traded Yakupov to St. Louis, I believe they got a 3rd round pick.
Right.
So I'm saying people are not going to say, okay, sure, he was a 1st round pick, he was a top 5 pick, I'm willing to take the chance. Yeah, they'll take the chance, but that chance will be mitigated by the height of the draft pick that they trade. That's why I think it would be a second.
I think you would get a 2nd round pick out of the top 50. And again, we're talking about a guy who's only had 37 points in 139 games. There's a very great risk that he doesn't even play 300 NHL games, which again, we all would have had him pegged for years ago. And now it's very much up in the air.
Now, okay, couple things before we start talking about Olympic teams and stuff.
Go for it, Mike. Now Mike with the news.
Now, the NHL apparently received a notification from 15 teams that they wanted to be a hub for the neutral site games. I think it was Baron Drager reported that it was knocked down to 8. He mentioned 5 cities: Toronto, Edmonton, Vancouver, Minnesota, and Vegas. The league apparently, Kev, I don't know if you've heard anything about this. I'm sure you have. They're not as concerned about the whole cross-border situations right now. They believe it's going to be extended between U.S. and Canada to early June in terms of the 2-week quarantine. But after that, they're thinking that it's probably going to there's not going to be a quarantine when you're crossing the border. If that's the case, then I think that increases the chances of a Canadian city being one of the 4 cities.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I do think by the time they are playing and we've got to worry about it. I mean, the issue would be just getting them over here for training. But, why couldn't they just train with some Canadian teams over there? Because if you're just training and then, get over here, I think it'll be resolved because we'll have a better handle on what that's doing. So, I mean, a lot of it, I think, is going to be determined based on the hot spots of the virus.
Gotta be.
Well, Mike had a great point, Kev, and this was something that we were kind of talking about back and forth offline. So let's say they have the 4 spots, and it doesn't even matter where those neutral spots are. But if one of those teams happens to make it to the Stanley Cup and they're only using those neutral spots, somebody's going to have some home ice advantage. You kind of wonder by the time they get to the Cup if they're actually going to let those teams play in their home stadium, even if home arena, even if it's empty, simply because of that. And I thought Mike's right that you do get an advantage otherwise.
Yeah, especially if down the line they actually want to have fans in the stands. Like if they're going to use Tampa Bay as a hub, and then
they'll probably be allowed to have fans. Yeah,
right. And the thing is, if it's the Lightning in the finals, I mean, then you're having all 7 games.
That's the problem, right?
Yeah, that's a big problem. So I mean, if they want to have it a fair and equal playing field, then that they're going to have to think of that, or either have options of different cities, and they're going to want to plan that out because if it's a Stanley Cup final, just like they plan out the Super Bowl and where you're going to go years before, they want to have it planned out and organized.
I've been waiting to.
When do you think that we're going to have fans?
Yeah, that's.
Here's the thing, Ken. Florida has opened up sporting events for fans now. Right now, it's not even just open air. They're talking about NBA being allowed to have them.
Yeah.
Whether they're having them or not, we don't know, but they're allowed to have them.
I don't know. I just saw this morning in South Korea that they've been open and they had one nightclub where they had 130 some cases just from one nightclub. Like
I know, but this is DeSantis, who doesn't seem to care, and basically
people still care. Like people still, no matter how much you want to be, like rah, let's open up the country.
But this is
if you're going to work, it's one thing. If you're making a choice to go to a sporting event,
right. But this is the difference, though. The Korean Baseball Association or organization has said if there's one positive, they're shutting down the season. The NBA, MLB, and the NHL have basically said over the last week, Kev, that if there's a positive case, they're continuing. They're going on.
Well, I mean, the NHL has said, Bill Daley talked about that too. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that position is unrealistic when they explain that it's going to be based on circumstance.
Yeah,
right. Like if you test one and then get them out of there immediately, and then nobody tests positive for 3 or 4 or 5 days.
Right.
Then I could see. I mean,
all right, but here's an example. So the Orlando Magic and Miami Heat are the first NBA teams to open up their practice facility, and DeSantis specifically said that baseball, soccer, and basketball, he said, our people are starved to have some of this back in their lives, and he said they'll do it in a safe way, but he has opened it up, and you kind of wonder, but in a couple of months, would he open it up further? I think it's possible.
Well, possible, yeah, but I mean, I think it's never black and white. I mean, there's always gray, and even DeSantis is going to watch this and see what happens, and like I don't think there's going to be fans, but you can't count on that. I mean, we'll just have to see what happens. Like in Georgia, what are we 3 weeks now into it?
Yeah,
and they're thus far they haven't had the big surge that had been predicted. So
people are going to be way more careful because the new normal won't be like the old normal. There's definitely that. I mean, I just talked to somebody who flew an airplane recently, and because they had to, and they were saying it's going to blow your mind when you go back to that kind of thing. It's going to you're going to be even if they said everybody's allowed to fly, it's like you're going to see. People are on edge. They're like, don't get close to me. Don't get near me. Like that. There's a fight that broke out. He said there's a lot of people that are just, it doesn't matter. You're allowed to fly. It's legal.
Hell, I saw somebody being dragged, kicking and screaming out of a Red Lobster a couple days ago because they were waiting for 3 hours for dinner.
Yeah.
So people are on edge.
No, I mean,
and don't cough. Don't cough, whatever you do.
Yeah. Right. If we get to the Stanley Cup final, and let's assume that this
it'll be August.
That's right. Let's say we're in that towards the end of August even, which I think is possible.
I don't think the Stanley Cup final won't be till September.
Okay, so say we're in September.
If they're early.
I think that when it's impossible for us to sit and say there won't be fans or will be fans but by then we'll really know a lot. Like we'll have a lot of we would have seen whether or not we can open up at a little bit or all these things are going to happen. They're going to open up a little bit here. They're going to open up more there. They're going to try different ways. By that point, you're going to go through 3 or 4 iterations of what normal is, right?
And don't you think that if the NHL or NBA sees that, okay, we can put fans in Minnesota because that they would move games there so they could have fans? They might.
Yeah, I mean, possibly. I don't really think fans are going to come back until there's a vaccine, to be honest. I think that's
that's how I feel too.
And I think that, even with a vaccine, there will be people who will be hesitant. I think that's why I think we're really a year. I think next season's going to be weird. And I think that we're a year away, honestly, from where this is going to be. Like, the 2022-23 season might be normal, but the next year's already not going to be normal. We know that.
I'll tell you what I think is going to happen. I think maybe not this weekend, but soon, I think the UFC is probably going to test Florida and put people in the stands. I do, because they're allowed to operate there. And I think because they're basically saying, they're not saying you can't. They're just saying, we want sports here. You can come down here and play. Right. And I think all this stuff will be experimental. And I think there's going to be a few companies that are going to try it at some point. And it may not be the major league.
There's a big group of people out there, and this is the problem. Not a problem, but there's a big group for events like this. Actually, it's maybe not a problem. If you want to go to an event like this and the risks, then I don't know that we can tell you shouldn't, because you're not endangering somebody else. Like if you're endangering
you can just not let them in the door.
Right. You'll have people.
What I'm saying is there's this weird thing that's going on in America right now, that this machismo almost about You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to wear a mask, and I'm cooler, and that kind of thing is going to die very quickly.
Well, I want to make a point about that mask thing, but before we get there, the point I want to make about Russ said is that look, we can guess. Russ just guessed what he thinks is going to happen.
Yeah,
right.
But the truth is, it's impossible for even us to make an educated guess because the people who make the decisions don't even know what they're going to do.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so you could say, well, here's what I think they're going to do. Well, you don't really know. You don't have any idea because they don't know what they're going to do. Like, there's you have all these options that they're considering, A, B, C, D, E, and F, and all depends on what's happened with the virus. But anyway, I want to tell you something funny about that. I watched the Korean baseball this morning. I'm sure Russ and Mike did too. I watched it, and I guess the coach on first base wears a mask. Is that correct? And I saw a coach come in, and they were doing the bump, but the coach was wearing his mask down on his chin. It reminded me of and back in the old days in hockey, when you had to wear I think it was the junior hockey, you had to wear the mask, and they would wear it up on like top of their head.
Right.
So like the mask would be there, but it wasn't serving any purpose.
Well,
that's what the Korean coach was doing. Like he had his mask on, but it was down around his chin where, he was breathing normally, and it wasn't stopping any virus from escaping. So
it's funny. Leo Komarov of the Leafs when he was with the Leafs a few years ago, would always tilt his visor up. So basically, it wasn't blocking anything. And it was like, okay, then what's the point of wearing the visor? You don't have to wear the visor, but
no.
Anyway.
Which brings me to this question that I really want to ask, Kevin. Okay, and we've talked about it on the show a couple times this week, because I had talked to one person at a team who believes that one of the things that could happen when these players return is they'll all be required to wear full face shields, like that would go down to cover their entire. And
no, I don't think that.
You don't think? I mean, do you think that's a good idea? I mean,
I'd have to know more about it. Like, you'd really need the medical people because those things have so many different places where air comes in.
They do, but I mean, we're talking when there's questions now about the eyes, like whether this can be transmitted through the eyes. That's a big thing now, as we've all seen. That people think that one doctor says I wear a mask all the time and I got it. I must have got it through speculates in the eyes. I mean, you can protect. I mean, you can't protect breathing, obviously. And these guys are exercising, and they'll hate it. They don't want to wear full face shield. But
that's why it won't happen.
But it does feel like to me like you actually are making it a lot safer in a way.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be hard for me to buy that because they're porous. Those masks are. So
they are. I mean, but you're still. I mean, sweat and things that are flying around.
Yeah, I mean. I guess you'd probably be able to convince me that it was less dangerous, but stuff can still get in. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about it to even speculate on that.
Now, do you think the league would go with something like that? Or that's my.
I think it would be one of those things like you can't get the Players Association has long had players don't want to be as safe as.
Right.
They should be. So I can't imagine they would go for that. But I don't know.
It was just something I
think if you made the wives vote and the mothers, you'd get a different outcome.
Yeah.
Now
they're 100%.
The latest proposal or latest rumored proposal regarding playoff format is 24 teams. Elliot Friedman reported about this yesterday. The top team in each hub would get a bye, and then the 5 teams would play a 5-team round robin, eliminating the bottom 2 teams to get down to 16. Now that's sort of
an old-fashioned soccer.
It's sort of a halfway measure from what you were talking about, which was an NCAA single elimination, which would be dumb. But I mean, this would at least be one game.
I didn't feel like about that.
It's asinine, is what it is. But that's why it's not going to happen.
That's just an absurd, ignorant comment, Mike. Like, when I hear stuff like that, like. I mean, it's just an ignorant comment. I mean,
sorry.
Would I vote for that? No.
Mike, you're ignorant.
Is it the right way to do it? But we're dealing with a pandemic here.
I realize that.
And for you to say that it's like you say like this is so important that the idea of winning the cup is far more important than what's going on to try to keep everybody safe. So, I don't know what to say to that. Like
you've already said it.
I did say it, but I mean, it doesn't I hear that stuff. I expect it from like a 16-year-old, not a guy that's been around the block. Now, I get it. Like I wouldn't vote for that either. But if they had to play it, I would get it. I would understand if that's all they could do.
But this is a compromise I can live with. Not single elimination, but round robin, where each team plays one other team once, and then whoever has the most points, second most points, third most points would make the 16. That's fine. The other way is just unreasonable. So that's
I like it better with the top 2 teams making it in, and then there being a playoff between 3rd and the 6th and 4 and 5. I think that to me is, I don't know.
It's better.
A round robin to me feels like a youth soccer tournament. I have to admit, I can't get around that.
Well, they do that in the Olympics.
Yeah, I kind of thought that to be fair and to for the integrity of the game is what Bettman calls it. I just say being fair. You want to give the bubble teams a chance, but I think this one actually goes even further when we go. Mike and I talked about this before the show.
Yeah.
And does the Montreal Canadiens, do they deserve to get in? The Chicago Blackhawks, probably not. How will people react if they end up, squeezing into the playoffs and the 4-round system? People won't be.
My concept, which is a little bit weirder than that, I was working on a blog about this today. I was going to put out tomorrow. Is first 1 and 2 get in, give 1 and 2 because give those 2 get into the first round. Then 3 plays 6 and 4 plays 5. But in a series where in a best of 3, in a quasi best of 3, where if 3 beats 6 or in one game, then they're in. But 6 would have to beat 3 in 2 games to get in. And that gives the little bit more of a home ice advantage.
It's a little bit better.
It's a little bit more of a regular season advantage.
I mean, I will say this. The biggest thing that has changed while we've had this pause is that teams have gone back and they're doing a ton, because I've heard this through some people already and somebody we just interviewed. They're doing a ton of video study. They're doing a ton of everything to figure out what their flaws were during the regular season where they wouldn't normally have a chance to do this. So there are going to be some teams that come back looking way better than what they were going into that pause. So the idea now where we say, hey, it didn't look like the Canadians were going to make it, that's fine. But if they did amazing study and they figured out how to fix their flaws, they're going to go further in this than we thought. And it's going to create some interesting results for sure.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what we do, it's going to be a far different tournament than we've ever seen before. The emphasis now is, the guys that are the best conditioned teams, the teams that had the most players that had workout stations in their home, the team that had veteran players who were able to work out, they're going to have a little bit of an advantage. Depth going to matter.
Also, I mean, in this round robin aspect that you're talking about with the first team getting the bye, it's an advantage.
Yeah, maybe
time,
it's not an advantage.
It's not. Yeah,
you're just sitting stiff and you're not getting
the other teams are playing 3 games. I mean, they're getting 3 games of hockey.
Yeah, it's preferable to one of the systems that was proposed a few weeks ago, where the first and second place teams would play a meaningless best of 3 to determine the division winner in a game where you're having neutral site games and there is no advantage to having a division winner. That's just dumb.
They probably put that in there so you'd have something to complain about.
Yeah, that was really kind of ridiculous. But I think that sitting around while other teams play 3 games, and then that first place team, I wouldn't give them a good chance in that first game they play against somebody when the other teams have played 3 hockey games and they haven't played.
That just keeps my heart beating. So that's what I need.
Yeah, but here's the thing: do we think here that this has the chance to be that like we say all the time, anybody can win the cup, but what really, that's not exactly true. I mean, for the most part, it's been the really, good teams that have won. Now we've had the New Jersey Devils several years ago, got in the final and they were kind of surprising. I remember the next year, everybody, I would say can you name one defenseman on the Devils, and people would have a hard time, the previous year. But this year, like, it really could happen. Like, we could have a 16 seed win it all. I think it's possible.
I think you're right, and
which really could make it interesting.
I think that does make it. I think that makes it fun. Of course, these guys don't think that, but I think that makes it fun because I think that. We've gotten also, as an aside, we got to the point where we've run out of classic hockey games, because last night I'm running through the thing and I go through and I get to MSG where they're playing a classic Devils Flyers game. I'm thinking, this must be a playoff game, and this is like this is the era where Parise is still a Devil. Hedberg is in goal for the Devils. And I'm like trying to remember when the heck did the Flyers play the Devils when Hedberg was in goal? And I'm thinking, this is kind of great. And it goes to overtime. I'm like, this is kind of fun, And then I realized, the game was like a 5-minute overtime in a shootout. They just showed a regular season game.
Yeah.
The Devils were out.
It must have been that night at MSG because they were showing a regular season game of Sabres Senators from like 2006.
I kept the whole chore during this game was to try to find out what was special about this game. Was there something incredible that happened at some point in the shootout? Did someone do something? And no, I mean, the only interesting thing about the shootout at all was that Danny Briere took a shot, scored a goal, but they went to Toronto to see if he stopped or not on the way in. Like if the puck continued moving forward.
So you're saying not every game is interesting, Ek? Is that what you're basically saying?
The Devils are a storied franchise that have won several interesting games. I mean, like, why are we showing up regular?
Several.
What was special was that game was available in the MSG archives to be played. That was what was
Rofsky in goal for the Flyers. That was kind of interesting, but I don't know. The whole thing was really crazy.
Well, what I've had trouble with, not only with hockey, but the same thing in baseball. And it just shows you how old I am. I'm old as dirt. Like anything that's not 20 years old, like, it feels like I just saw that.
Right.
I don't want to see that again. So you got to go back. You got to go back before 2000.
Got to be in fourth week.
And then what happens when you do that? So you hook me in and I'm watching the 75 World Series.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, yeah, but Pete Rose is going to turn 80 next year. and Joe Morgan is like 77 or 78.
You guys are older than dirt.
Well, but you know what? Hold on. But you know what? See, if I would have watched the 75 series again, I'd be still arguing over that Ed Armbruster call. And
that was absurd. Yeah.
And it would annoy me again. Like, I would get annoyed.
It makes it interesting if it's not in HD.
I knew I wanted to
turn to a game and it's not in HD and it's like the small cutoff screen.
Yeah.
Then I'm like,
I wanted to bring this up because it has to do with the Tigers and it has to do with Armando Galarraga, who apparently
you can't award them.
I see. I
remember that.
It was such a blown call, and
it was, but the argument against it, like, I mean, that was a totally blown call, but the argument against it is that are you going to go back then and look at every pitch, because there were a lot of pitches that were blown, and had they called that pitch correctly, then so it's I think he's going to get more notoriety.
Yeah.
For this.
You're right.
Because people are really going to remember. I mean, because he really was jobbed, and everybody sort of accepts it. But I understand why they can't reverse it. Like, that's the human error. He apologized. He knew he blew it.
I'm for going back to 85 and eliminating that Don Denkinger play with the Cardinals and the Royals.
Yeah. I mean, I did write this in my notes, by the way, just about the most interesting thing about this game that I watched a little bit of last night was that David Clarkson for the Devils had 9 shots on goal, which was pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
What a good guy. Bad ending. A really good guy. David Clarkson was a good guy.
He was good. He was really good. Yeah.
I know. And watching that, I'm like, that really does stink, because Clarkson's become such like a controversial, like, salary moved around.
Well, and it's funny because I wrote about this today. Clarkson's deal with the Leafs, because he was traded to Columbus, then went to Vegas, then went back to the Leafs last year, and his contract is on LTIR.
Yeah.
And both Elliot Friedman and Frank Cervelli wrote something about teams, especially with the cap being flat next year, maybe being more open to trading for these LTIR players like Brent Seabrook if he never plays again, or Zetterberg.
Thinking he's going to be back this year.
Who said that?
Seabrook. I've seen that.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I don't know if the Blackhawks want that, but there are guys like Kessler who have a couple years left, Gaborik who's never playing again. Whether teams would trade for those guys to gain cap flexibility by putting them on LTIR, and the Leafs went through that last year with Clarkson and Horton,
Right.
and it's unless they can really make a move that dramatically improves them. The thought is that they don't want to go down that road because they were sending players down every day.
Right. It's a shell game. It's hard.
It really is, and it limits you in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting that
It
they
shortens your bench in some games.
I do want to talk to Kevin about Team USA before we get out of here. So,
well, just let him finish. That
Yeah, I just want to ask a question to Mike, and then we'll do that.
Yeah.
So what do you think the Leafs would give? Like if they were trying to get Zetterberg's, the contract, like what's the going rate for that?
Probably a prospect like a Jeremy Bracco. I mean, you got to remember, I think Zetterberg's a $1 million salary, but it's a $6 million cap hit. But the Wings are not a team that's going to get anywhere close to the cap. But they would use it to get to the cap floor if they don't put them on LTIR. So a team like them, it may not be a benefit for them. A team like Anaheim, who's got players that they want to spend money on, they might want to get rid of Kessler. So it would all depend on the scenario of the team and where they are in terms of the salary cap.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so here's I went through talking to some of my people at USA Hockey, and and some have been involved recently, and to try to come up with what the 2022 USA team could look like, and there's a lot of there's some of the forwards here, and the 10 definites. These are the 10 definites that they came up with on here. And
without us saying who, there's one guy that Russ and I both said did not belong on the definite list. Kevin, which one do you think that is? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Chris Kreider.
Russ and I both said Jack Hughes because Jack Hughes has not. He's had 1 year. He hasn't established himself.
Yeah.
Well,
I think Kreider would be a definite.
I thought Kreider is getting older, but we'll see.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Jack Hughes. I mean, Jack Hughes is going to be on the team, I think. But it's just a matter of the biggest change on the American program is that center ice.
Yeah.
Like I mean, they just have terrific centers now where they didn't have any before. Like you're not going to not have Dylan Larkin on the team either.
Right.
Yeah, no, I have him in my possibles, and these are my possibles.
Yeah, Dylan Larkin, he is Pied Piper.
Yeah.
You look at most of these guys on here. If you go scroll down a little bit.
Yep. We're back up to these guys.
Yeah, Austin Matthews.
Yep.
Even Patrick Kane, Johnny Gaudreau. All these guys, they're going to insist on Larkin.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah, he's kind of a glue player that everybody kind of loves and appreciates, and
that's cool.
Yeah. So,
And I think the Kachucks provide an edge that this team maybe wouldn't have had in past Olympics.
Well, these are my possibles down here, and Matthew Kachuk's on that list.
I'd say he's a lock too.
Yeah. So both Kachucks, you think?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're not gonna. Yeah, they're heart and soul guys. You want them. I mean, you got to compete against Canada. So
yeah.
Actually, the one guy I talked to said he would like to see the Kachucks play with Jack Hughes as a line. He thought that would be a fantastic thing. He thought,
yeah,
it'd be a great line. There's no question.
I mean, the speed and just the tenacity of that. Defensively, this is where it kind of gets interesting too. These are the definites and the possibles. Definites, possibles. Here,
Ryan Suter's there you go.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah. Adam Fox. Like I wouldn't list him right now as a definite, but I think he's going to make it.
I said that too. I said that too.
Like he is really good.
Yeah.
The three names that weren't on this list that I think would be considerations. One is Cam Fowler. Another is Jacob Trouba, especially since I think most of these defensemen, with the exception of Jones, are more offensive guys and not physical guys. And the third was Brett Pesce.
I had a fourth. Mine was Ryan Lindgren because Fox and Lindgren had made up the Rangers' best pairing. If they do that for another season, they're both guys that have played internationally for Team USA forever. I could see them bringing the pairing.
Who are you taking out of the top 6 though to make that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Like I love Torrey Krug, but how do you take out like these guys are all great?
Yeah.
Well, Krug's main positive is his point work on the power play, and in this instance, you got Werenski, you've got Hughes, and you've got Carlson, so you really have those bases covered. So
but but the one thing with Torrey Krug is, and we've seen this he competes hard.
He does compete hard.
Very much
so. Yeah, and it's hard not to think of Ryan Suter. It's not a place on it. Yeah. So it just goes to show you how much they've improved.
They really have. And then goalie situation, I have 4 goalies in 2 spots here.
If Suter makes it, by the way, I think he would probably be the captain because he's the oldest player.
I wouldn't name him the captain. I think to be honestly, I think it would be
Kane.
Yeah, well, it'll be one of those 4.
How about, I think Blake Wheeler, actually, honestly.
No, I don't think so.
No,
I think he'll be in the group though. But I think you have to recognize this new generation.
Yeah,
Matthews or Eichel or
yeah,
one of those guys.
One of them.
Maybe So goalie wise,
oh my God, like and Kyle Connor, like how can we not have him on there?
Yeah, he's on there.
He's on there. He's on there.
He's on. Wait, it was on here. Was he? Yeah, he's in one of my possibles here. Yeah, I am in my possibles.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's and they are very. This is really going to be a fun. If we see this, a really fun team to watch. Like
look at the goalies though. The thing about these goalies, Ben Bishop has gotten hurt.
Yeah.
Connor Hellebuck was great, then he was ungreat, and then he was great again.
Yep.
And Gibson has been great, but he's had injuries.
Yep.
Right.
And Jonathan Quick probably is past his best days.
Yeah.
Which is why when we were looking at this, Russ and I both said Hellebuck and Gibson, and then the third could be a younger goalie like a Cal Peterson or somebody like that. If they have,
I think Spencer Knight. I just did a show again with Steve Valiquette, and he said since the age of 14, he has thought that Spencer Knight has stardom written, and U.S. has always brought a guy that just sort of goes on the team because they know he's going to be a future star. That would make sense to me.
Yeah.
But Thatcher Demko is another one.
Yeah. To me, Hellebuck and Gibson are both. I think
if they re-sign Markstrom though in Vancouver, is the Thatcher Demko era done before it starts?
No, I think that Markstrom had a Vezina type year, so it's not over.
Exactly.
Are they better than Canada, Kevin?
I think that they've got a real chance to win a gold. I think we're right where we were in 2010. And I think this team's better because of how good they are up the middle.
Yeah, they've got more talent.
This team's better, but if it gets into an overtime again, and based on what happened in 2010, I'm not going to feel good about it. I don't care who's on it.
Yeah. The one thing about this team is they got some hard-nosed players now.
They do.
Trucks. Before, if you looked at even their great scoring wingers, they're all small. Pat Kane, Zach.
They do have some size, some speed, some toughness.
Right.
Reminds you a lot more like the old Kachuk, Roenick, Amonte type stuff like that.
Guys, someone like Hughes has great speed. Like there's Quinn Hughes has great speed on Olympic guys, especially. They'll have some weapons.
But to make your point, that 96 World Cup team, they had the feisty, LaFontaine, Roenick, Amonte, Dano. There was a feistiness to that team. 2010, 2014, I really didn't get that feeling from those two Olympic teams. This one with the Kachuk, I can just imagine Matthew Kachuk getting under Drew Doughty's skin in an Olympic game.
Only issue, you're right. The only issue here is though, and even though I think, and I would vote for Hellebuck for the Vezina, if you're talking about 96, there is no Richter type goalie on this team.
No,
definitely not.
Yeah,
or Ryan Miller, because Ryan Miller had a fantastic.
I'll tell you though, I'd have a hard time putting Kreider on and Connor off, and I love Chris Kreider.
Yeah,
But Connor has been a 30 goal scorer since he's gotten in the league.
He really has.
Connor has, but a lot of it comes from the power play. So I think it would depend on if they are looking for more size, speed, and toughness, or are they looking for the best power play? I think that would play into it.
Let's just say that the choices will be a lot easier if we go through a full 82 game season next year.
Yeah, and guys will be hurt, and
right. Because if Jack Hughes has a great year, then
he's on there instantly.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be a fun team. I mean, the speed that we have with Hughes, Kane, and Gaudreau is just ridiculous. Like the toughness you have with the other guys, it's just.
I would bet that Kane ends up on Matthews' wing. They practice in the offseason. They go to the same skill coach. I would bet that Kane would be on Matthews' line.
Yeah. I think
there's a lot of guys that are, no TJ Oshie.
Right.
No Vincent Trocheck, who, could easily be with the fourth line guy on that.
Yeah. I mean, do you bring Oshie just for the shootout aspect of the Olympics? That's another thought,
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of great players.
There are a lot of great players. It's going to be a lot of fun. Well, Kevin. Thanks for joining us today. I'm really, and if you do figure out what happened with that bear, let us know.
Yeah. So you know that book.
No, I just looked it up, and I'm intrigued by it. I'm going to read it now that you have, Tony, because I'm always fascinated.
Well, I would like to send you my reading, but it's 8 minutes. It took me to read the book, and it's hard to move an 8-minute video. Can I tell you that?
It was not easy. Yeah, no, still.
I struggled with that, trying to get it to the people. Like,
that's why you need a YouTube page, like just a private YouTube page.
You probably should have condensed it down, Kev.
Well, I did. I really should have done the abridged version.
Because you could have skipped around and nobody would know.
I'm actually thinking about doing a podcast centering on whether or not the bear was guilty of.
I'm there. I will read the book and I will do that podcast with you, Kevin.
Yeah, and I really think we could investigate, and I think the turtle knows more than he's.
Turtle knows more than it's letting on.
Ack's going to report an E4 that the Rabbit got traded to Toronto for Thomas Caberlet.
There's one Parks and Rec where Leslie goes to a children's thing to read at a bookstore, and she's done a controversial thing, and she's running for this city council thing. So she's reading to the children, but as a positive thing for her campaign. But there are reporters there also want to ask her questions that are controversial. So after she's done reading this story, the reporters start asking her controversial questions, and then one reporter says, But did the fluffy bunny get across the river? That was like one of the things, because it's not answered in the book. It's the same kind of thing. It's what I couldn't help but think of when you said this.
Oh, before you go, one more animal thing.
Yeah.
I highly urge, and I know you all appreciate this. There's a video floating around there that I've seen on social media today of a bobcat jumping from one part of a bridge to another. Your son would. It's incredible.
It is. It's actually on the Weather Channel app. You can see it on there. That's one place you can see it. The other video that's out there is Incredible Animals, because my son is all over this animal thing. There's an actual video of a coyote chasing a roadrunner, an actual roadrunner being chased by an actual coyote in the desert in Arizona. It's hilarious because it's like literally out of like Looney Tunes. An actual roadrunner running away from an actual coyote.
Was the coyote wearing an Acme suit?
Well,
should have been. It was just.
I when I was living in Arizona in the 70s, working for the Casa Grande Dispatch, I saw roadrunners, and where I saw them at was the golf course.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because the open spaces. So where you saw the most roadrunners, the par fives, because they could wind it up and let it rip.
They can move.
They can't. Oh yeah, they were very, very fast.
They're really fun to watch. I've seen them too when driving across, but I've never seen coyotes are nocturnal, so you usually don't see them all that often in videos during the day. But to chase a roadrunner, it was just hilarious. It was the funniest thing.
We have coyotes in our backwoods, so
we were just this is a little topic, but I'll end here. We were my son and I walk. We put on waders and we walk this river right near us. It's one of our things that we do. We walk down this river for a couple miles, and we're walking along, and we come through the mud. And when there's mud on the side, you always see great tracks, the animals that wander down. And yesterday we saw coyote tracks, which we've never seen before. And it was clear as day, coyote tracks, because the difference between a dog and a coyote track is like the pointedness of the toes and stuff like that. You can we looked it up. There's no question about it. So it was really cool. It was like that there are coyotes in this neighborhood. I don't think anybody around here would suspect.
I saw a hummingbird at my hummingbird feeder. That's all I got.
There you go.
How many dogs do you have, Russ?
2.
Okay.
You're 2 dogs, 2 cats, and a rabbit right now.
But Kai is so
I
big.
say right now because you never know.
Right.
Kai is so big it counts as 2 dogs.
Kaya does count as 2 dogs.
Big dog, yeah.
Yeah, but your rabbit is law abiding.
Yeah. No priors to my rabbit.
All right. See you later.
Without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you all